Glastonbury. I was there. I watched Bob Vylan. I watched Kneecap. Aye. Yes, this past weekend it was Hippie People's Umrah, aka Glastonbury. And I was there, like a fish out of water, like a mango lassi at Wimbledon. I was actually invited to perform because man's rated like that. And so I was there, up close, when Kneecap and 40,000 people chanted "F*** Keir Starmer," and when Bob Vylan made his already infamous "Death, Death to the RDF" chant. Performances and remarks which the Prime Minister of the UK called not appropriate and appalling, respectively. Has anyone told Keir Starmer these are musicians, not poor disabled people trying to claim benefits or old people trying to keep the heating on? Calm down. Elsewhere, those lads have been called outrageous, revolting, anti-Semitic, and the police have started criminal investigations. Really? Given the wider context of all of this, I'm becoming deaf to the idiotic dumb farce. I'm not saying don't be offended, or don't find it distasteful or inappropriate. That's completely up to you. But the sheer level of institutional outrage is disingenuous, hypocritical, and a distraction. Like Kneecap have been saying for weeks, they are not the story. And now, despite an ironically hilarious name given the circumstances, Bob Vylan are not the story. The day that happened at Glastonbury, this happened in Gaza. One thing I've always hated about the way stories are reported in the media is this pretense that events occur in a vacuum. That nothing is happening, life is rainbows and unicorns, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, bam, a thing happens. For no apparent reason. My entire life, black and brown pain has been ignored, dismissed, and belittled. Our pain is decontextualized, placed in a vacuum, and our actions explained away as barbaric, offensive, and in need of taming. Whereas white pain is often sympathized with, excused, understood, and sometimes even weaponized. And before you tell me Kneecap are white, Kneecap are Irish Catholic. That makes them Padistani in my book. Bob Vylan haven't chanted "Death, Death to the RDF" apropos of nothing. What is the context, parliamentarians? Why did he chant it, media folk? Could it be, and I'm just pouring it out there, as like a theory, that alongside the US, we, the UK, have aided, abetted, armed, excused, encouraged, endorsed, supported, ignored, and provided diplomatic cover for occupation, ethnic cleansing, apartheid, war crimes, and genocide. The 5 pillars of colonialism. Mashallah. Our government's complicity, alongside Keir Starmer's refusal to condemn or call out Israel's actions, is an injustice upon an injustice. That's made people upset and angry, and has meant that protest is not only inevitable, but essential. But instead of recognising these injustices, activists and protests are locked up. That'd be like the fire brigade aiming their fire hose at someone shouting "fire, fire" instead of at the burning building. Palestine Action is about to be proscribed as a terrorist organisation by a woman who has stood in parliament with a suffragette t-shirt on. Yvette Cooper has the self-awareness of a banana in the sun. The suffragettes were terrorists in their time. They literally blew up. If it wasn't for the civil disobedience of the suffragettes, Yvette Cooper might not even have the vote today. No injustice or bad law or a set of bigoted circumstances has ever been overturned by asking politely. Nelson Mandela was a terrorist in his time. Martin Luther King was a rabble-rousing troublemaker. Malcolm X was an extremist. We have a long history of troublemakers in the arts and literature in the West. From Chaucer to the Dixie Chicks, from Monty Python to Muhammad Ali, from the Sex Pistols to Miss Rachel. Stirring the sensibilities of the establishment is a long-standing tradition, and long may it continue. Cultivating an atmosphere that does not allow for criticism of Israel leads to censorship, which bottles up frustration that boils over into outbursts such as the ones expressed on Saturday afternoon. Also, it's hypocritical, because if Bob Vylan had chanted "Death, Death to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard," "Death, Death to the Russian Armed Forces," "Death, Death to the Korean People's Army," no one would have cared. The IDF are a tool of the Zionist caliphate. They are an institution, an organisation. They are not a person. Stating death to the IDF is calling for death to a system responsible for the genocide of the people of Gaza, for the apartheid in the West Bank, and for this.
Kalel, no!
Similarly, death to the post office for framing thousands of innocent postmasters. Death to Thames Valley Water for spilling sewage into the seas. Death to NCP. That one doesn't need explaining. No one cares about that. Also, in chanting death to the IDF, Bob Vylan was in keeping with a time-honoured Israeli tradition of calling for death. When Benjamin Netanyahu referenced Amalek all the way back in October 2023, was that not a call for death on Gazans? When the then Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant called Gazans human animals and implemented a deadly complete siege of food, water, fuel and medical supplies, Was there not a call for death? When the new Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, said last month Khomeini can no longer be allowed to exist, is that not a call for death? If that's a bit too abstract, what about regular Israelis marching in the street? Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper, published a story last week containing testimony from actual IDF soldiers confessing to the most ridiculously sick shit. They're literally playing Squid Games with Palestinian civilians. And yet the entirety of our moral outrage is reserved for a f***ing punk band. The fact Israeli newspapers publish stories that our media won't even report on second hand is cowardice and a dereliction of duty. Shame on them. Actually, let's be honest, our media is complicit. Yoav Gallant, who currently has a live arrest warrant for war crimes from The Hague no less, co-authored an article in The Times, the British one, just last month calling for Trump to finish off Iran. Another call to death, presumably. Those lads love it. I will not be lectured on right and wrong by institutions who platform literal war criminals and by liars who have the moral compass of a wasp in a nursery. Our moral panic is so selective and manufactured. Have I got news for you? Literally joked about bombing this same festival in 2019. I don't care. It was a joke. But there was no huge moral outrage, because given the level of outrage and venom directed at Bob Vylan and Kneecap, you'd be forgiven if you thought they'd murdered over 100,000 people over the last 20 months, not the IDF. This country has a twisted view that state-sanctioned murder is not as bad as brash civil disobedience. It's grotesquely perverse. Bob Vylan chanted a slogan, didn't write and publish a manifesto, get a grip and tackle the actual issue, otherwise history will remember you as genocidal, enabling, subservient cowards. And dear Palestinians, unoppressed people the world over, the sun will shine on you again. Chaki Allah. See you next week.